Hello and welcome to my dungeon. Today I'm going to show you the Dragonbane RPG. This is the newest edition of the oldest Swedish role-playing game, Drivethroughrpg. I believe this is the 4th edition, but this is the first time that we get an English translation and an international release. In this video I will show you everything that is inside of the box, give you a brief overview of the rules and give you my highlights, and then I tell you who I think this game is for and what other books you might be able to use with this. If this is something that interests you, like and subscribe, and let's get started. The box is nice and sturdy and surprisingly heavy. This is more than a kilogram of gaming material. We've got some plastic stands for paper minis here. We've got some nice D20. Notice the 20 is a demon set, still readable as a 20 though. And the 1 is a dragon, still readable as 1. Some silica bags so this doesn't get wet, and some packs with cards. In here we have the initiative cards, so for initiative you draw cards. We've got improvised weapons, more on that later. Then adventure cards, these are just rumors about the different adventure sites. You've got a fat stack of random treasure you can draw and give to your players, including trinkets, gold, weapons and armor, some special items, potions and spell books. There's one rat in here that you don't want to draw, but it could happen. Catalog of Free League games. A 1-page leaflet on how to use the contents of this box, getting started. Nothing on the back side. And we've got the rule book printed in full color on high quality paper, and it's fairly chunky. It's definitely not a rules light game. We've got the adventure volume, same quality of print, also fairly chunky, over 100 pages. Alone in Deepfall Breach is solo rules for Dragonbane. I'm not a solo player, but I've heard that they are pretty good. There's a map of the adventure of the small campaign setting for this box set, the Misty Vale. I think it's a beautiful map. Kickstarter backers on the back. We've got a small gridded combat map with 2 sides, 1 wilderness, 1 dungeon. Some pre-generated characters and some empty character sheets to make more characters. Could have been a few more of those if you ask me. Interestingly enough, these are printed on both sides, so maybe your players can share them. Or, you know, if one character dies, you can make another on the back. We've got paper minis printed on high quality cardstock. These go into the plastic bases. A bit fiddly. I think these are a great addition to this box set. They also go back into the cardboard fairly easy for storage. Dragonbane uses a D20 roll under system. If you roll under or on your skill level, you succeed at a task. If you roll over it, you fail. If you roll a 1, that is a critical success called a dragon. If you roll a natural 20, that is a critical failure called a demon. The game knows 6 attributes: strength, constitution, agility, intelligence, willpower, and charisma. These are the innate starting talents of your character. They do not increase throughout character development, but you also usually don't roll on these, and they don't give you a bonus to your skills. But they do influence your movement speed, your damage bonus, your hit points, your willpower points, and your base chance, meaning your starting skill level for all of your skills. There are about 30 core skills ranging from acrobatics over riding to weapon skills. There are 10 individual weapon skills that you roll on to hit anything in combat. Furthermore, your character is defined by heroic abilities. These give you special moves, special abilities that you can activate spending willpower points. That could be something like the Berserker ability, the Battle Cry, or Deflect Arrow. You can parry a ranged attack with a melee weapon instead of using a shield. There are about 40 of them. These are fairly powerful and determine how your character fights and what cool stuff they can do. These heroic abilities also include magic talent. Anyone can learn magic in this game. You just have to buy the magic talent and then find a trainer to actually teach you a magic skill. The game has starting professions, but these really only determine where your character came from and what they can do at the beginning of the adventure. Each profession gets 6 trained skills that will have a doubled base chance depending on your attribute scores, and they get 1 starting heroic ability from the list I just showed, as well as some starting gear. But after the start of the game, it is up to you where you want to develop your character. Dragonbane is a classless and levelless system. For character development, the game uses so-called advancement marks. This means that after a gaming session, you can roll on one of your skills, and if you roll over your skill with a d20, you can advance it by 1. Also, sometimes you get new heroic abilities. When you increase a skill level to 18, which is quite a feat, you immediately gain a new heroic ability of your choice. Also, after a grand heroic deed, the DM or the adventurer can reward you with heroic abilities. This is like a milestone leveling event. And as you can see, this is completely free form. There are no tables where you look up what new ability to get at a new level. You can get any of the heroic abilities as long as you meet the skill requirements and you don't increase your hit points or your willpower points. Your hit points are equal to your constitution score and your willpower points are equal to your willpower score. There are heroic abilities you can take, robust and focused, that will increase these scores by a bit. But then you'd have to choose between getting a few more hit points or getting a new special ability. This all means that the power progression curves during character development during a long-running game is comparatively flat. Characters already start out as competent adventurers that can hold their own in a fight, and while they get more powerful, there's no hit point bloat, and they never get to a level of power where they're like superheroes, and low-level monsters, no matter how many of them, are no longer a challenge. While it is totally feasible that a high-level dwarven warrior could kill 42 orcs during a siege, he could only do it as long as they came one by one. If 42 orcs surround a high-level character, he's dead meat. And that is because of the action economy in this game. When it is your turn to act, you get movement and action, but if you are attacked, you have to actively parry that. And if you do, you lose your action and your movement. You're losing your turn to defend yourself. That is, of course, the same for NPCs and monsters. Meaning that this action economy is where most of the tactical depth of the combat system comes from. And I think this is what will make or break the game for most players. Let's have a look at this box here, Melee Tactics, that describes this in some more detail. To be successful in melee combat, it is important to realize that your most precious resource is your actions. You only get one per round, including reactions such as dodging or parrying. If several player characters are fighting together, it is often very effective to focus on the same enemy, as that person can only parry or dodge once, which leaves them vulnerable to multiple attacks. But always remember that you too are exposed to attacks after performing your action. The heroic abilities Defensive and Lightning Fast, which allow you to get an extra parry or an extra dodge by spending willpower points, increase your ability to defend yourself against multiple opponents, so they are very important, very powerful. In single combat against an opponent as powerful as yourself, it may be wise to wait and let the enemy strike first. If their attack misses, you do not need to parry or dodge and can then perform your own attack while the enemy is unable to protect themselves. The drawback is that you surrender the initiative to your enemy, who may choose a completely different action than what you expected. As this is a roll-under system, there is no armor class. Instead, armor gives you damage absorption. From 1 for very light leather armor to 6 for plate armor, and you can also put on a helmet for +1 or +2 armor. But these give you a bane, a disadvantage on certain skill checks. Furthermore, weapons deal a relatively high amount of damage. On average, a character will have 11 hit points, somewhere between 3 and 18. And that's not a lot. Unarmed damage is already a D6. A knife is a D8. Truly heavy weapon like a greatsword does 2d10 damage. If your character doesn't have high constitution and or heavy armor, any hit you take threatens to put you to 0 hit points immediately. This means that while you should take your time to plan your tactics and use your actions and initiative wisely, combat shouldn't take too long. The game is not super deadly though. If your character is reduced to 0 hit points, you make death rolls on your constitution, and only after you fail 3 times does the character actually die. So there are a few rounds of time for your party to save your character's life by performing a healing skill check, using healing magic or healing potion. You only die instantly if you are reduced to so many negative hit points as your hit point maximum. This game is actually heroic. Even when you are reduced to 0 hit points, a teammate or even your own character can rally them. Another player character within 10 meters and earshot can persuade you to rally and keep fighting despite having 0 hit points. This counts as an action. If you rally, you can continue acting as normal, but must keep making death rolls as described above. You can even try to rally yourself against your willpower with Bane, instead of someone else using persuasion. And if this is not the most heroic game mechanic in an RPG I've ever seen, then I don't know what is. If you think there should be a bit more consequence to being reduced to 0 hit points, you can add an optional rule. There are many optional rules. They are in these green boxes. Here's one for severe injuries. When we're reduced to 0 hit points, you roll on this table and get an injury that heals much slower than you get your hit points back. Like a broken nose. You get a Bane on all awareness rolls, healing time D6 days. And while all of these are annoying or maybe even a big hindrance, none of them are so severe that your character becomes unplayable. The worst thing you can roll on here is something like a severed finger. Your skill levels in all weapon skills are permanently reduced by 1. There's no severed arm or no severed head that kills your character instantly, and you can recover from all of these effects over time. There also is more high-level healing magic that can heal these injuries. Healing and resting is also fast. You can even rest in combat. If you do nothing for 1 round, you can recover D6 willpower points to keep using heroic abilities and magic. Then you can do a short rest, and you can do a shift rest, a long rest, a 6-hour rest, and that will fully recover all hit points and willpower points. Here's one combat rule I really like. Battles are sometimes fought in places where things in the environment can be used in combat as weapons for protection, for movement. These improvised weapons can be lots of different things, but what they all have in common is that they normally can only be used once, after which they are consumed. Using an improvised weapon is an action and can be combined with movement. Examples of improvised weapons can be found on playing cards in the box. At the start of combat, the GM can draw D3 cards to see which improvised weapons are available, or simply decide for themselves. The GM can mark an improvised weapon's exact location on the map, or say it is available anywhere in the area. The playing cards are placed on the table where everyone can see them. Once used, an improvised weapon is consumed and the card is removed. So this adds some items, some features to the environment that the PCs can use during the fight. Now let me show you some examples from the cards. Got a chandelier to swing from and perform a melee attack. These are sorted by potential battle space. We've got a crevice for a cave to push someone in, to trip them. And one of my favorites, the Ramaging Pig. Agitate to let it run into your enemies. I think this is a very neat little mechanic to spice up combat and make it more cinematic. Magic is cast using willpower points, and to cast a spell you must roll under your skill. There are 3 schools of magic: animism, elementalism and mentalism, that you can buy as skills. Even the mage starts with just one of them, but you can learn more during the game by choosing the heroic ability magic talent. And if you have any of these 3, you can also cast spells from general magic. You can learn new spells from teachers or from scrolls or from grimoires, as long as they are spells from school you know or from general magic. To cast a spell, you decide which power level you want to cast the spell at, and invest 2 willpower points per power level accordingly. Let me give you an example. Good old fireball spell here. The fireball inflicts 2d6 damage on a hit and sets fire to a flammable object. Each power level beyond the first increases the damage by d6 or creates another fireball that hits another target within range. So you can send this out to up to 3 targets if you cast this for 6 willpower. After deciding on the power level, you have to go through the casting time, which is normally just an action, but it can be longer. There can be rituals that take a stretch of time or even a shift to perform. And if you don't have the spell memorized, you can still cast it from your grimoire, it just takes twice as long. Magic users have to prepare spells, but there are no spell slots. They are not forgetting the spells after they are cast. It just limits how many they hold in their memory at one time. All other spells they have to cast from your grimoire. So memorize your main combat spells and cast all of your utility spells that are not time critical from your grimoire. Then you roll on your magic skill. If you succeed, you cast the spell. If you even roll a dragon, you get a critical success, double damage, doesn't cost any willpower, or you can immediately cast another spell. If you roll a demon, you cannot push the roll, and if you use the magical mishap optional rule, you roll on this table. And I would totally use this. These add a bit of chaos to magic, make it a bit more risky and unpredictable, but it's not so punishing that your character becomes unplayable or dies right away. Speaking about pushing your roll, this is an optional rule that you should totally use. If you fail a skill or attribute roll, you can choose to push the roll, which means you make another attempt. The new result applies whatever it is. If you have boons or banes, this is just advantage or disadvantage, you must re-roll all die. You can never push a demon roll, natural 20. Whenever you push a roll, immediately after the re-roll, you suffer a condition. This means that you get a bane on all rolls for skills based on a certain attribute, and rolls against the attribute in question. Each attribute is linked to a certain condition. Thus, there are 6 different conditions: exhausted, sickly, dazed, angry, scared, and disheartened. You decide which condition you get from pushing a roll, with 2 important restrictions. You cannot choose a condition you already have. You must be able to explain how the condition results from the action you are trying to perform. The GM has the right to reject clearly unreasonable explanations. Once you have all 6 conditions, you may no longer push your rolls. In addition to their effects, conditions provide inspiration for role-playing. Mark conditions on your character sheet. This is the only re-roll mechanic in the game. There are no luck tokens, no inspiration or anything. The re-rolling, the pushing, the roll is a resource like hit points or willpower points, and you will suffer the consequences, the conditions, by pushing your character past this limit. You have to decide if it is worth the resources and the condition whenever you want to do a re-roll. Conditions heal pretty quickly though. You can recover 1 during a stretch rest, and you recover all of them during a shift rest. But notice, you can get conditions from monster attacks and spells as well. If you suffer a condition that you already have, you must choose another condition. If you have all 6 conditions, you instead lose d6 willpower. If you are out of willpower, you instead lose d6 HP. So your character totally can die from taking too many conditions. Back to magic. We've got a good selection of spells here, but nothing too fancy or special. One thing of note is that within the general magic, there's magic to protect your group from magic, dispel, protector, and magic shield, which works like a counterspell. And there are also spells to create magic items, magic seal, charge, and permanence. And after creating these items, they can be used by anyone. As for 3 schools of magic, we've got animism, which are like your druidic spells. So you've got animal whisper, talk to animals, ensnaring roots. But also the healing spells, treat wound, heal wound, restoration, which lets you heal severe injuries like a cut of toe, and even resurrection, though this costs a point of willpower permanently. So you should try not to use that too many times. Also note that this magic school of animism is the only magic healing available. There are no priests, there are no clerics, And magic users are always squishy and not meant for close combat because of this little rule called magic and metal. You cannot use magic if you are wearing metal armor or have a metal weapon at hand. This includes partial metal items such as axes, spears, and studded leather, and even arrows. Meaning you can only wear the lightest armor and use staffs, clubs, and slings. In Dragonbane, a magic user cannot double up as a frontline fighter. Unless they use magic from the mentalism school to buff themselves. Back to the spells. Second school is elementalism, which gives you power over fire, earth, wind, and ice. You've got your fireball, frost, gust of wind, stone shield, tidal wave. These spells are mainly useful for combat. Finally, we've got mentalism. Spells of the mind and of the body. So yeah, we got farsight, levitate, power fist, mental strike, scrying, telepathy, and even flight and teleport. Let's talk about gear for a second. There's an abstract encumbrance system. You can carry up to a number of items half of your strength in your inventory without difficulty. So how much you carry and inventory management is made easy, but it is also important. You may want to invest in a donkey or in a mule with 2 saddlebags to carry some extra rations to a dungeon and to carry all of the treasure you find in the dungeon back to the village. In gear here we have a small selection of armor, we have a good selection of medieval weapons, and notice every item, even something like good boots, has an effect. And I mean every item. Boots protects against some journey mishaps. Fine garments give you a boon on charisma-based skills when the GM finds it reasonable. And even simple clothes are required to avoid a bane on charisma-based skills. This includes light sources. There's no dark vision in this game. None of the races called kin in this game can go by without a light source. Not even dwarves, not even wolfkin. By the way, all that kin does for your character is giving you a special ability that is used similar to a heroic ability, but is unique to your kin. And some of these are quite fitting and wonderful, I think. For example, the dwarves have Unforgiving. You can activate this ability when attacking someone who harmed you in the past and get a boon on the roll. It does not matter when the damage was inflicted. It may be wise to write down the name of everyone who harms you so you do not forget them. Not only is this a powerful ability, but it also encourages a dwarf player to keep his own personal book of grudges, which I think is a very dwarf thing to do. Back to gear. So no one can see in the dark, you need light sources. You've got only limited inventory space to carry torches and lanterns and oil. And they also work differently. A humble tallow candle illuminates a 4-meter radius, burns up to a shift, up to 6 hours, but roll a d4 after a stretch, after 15 minutes, after going through one room. Or if the bearer attacks or is attacked. On a 1, the candle goes out. So a tallow candle is very cheap, but it's not very bright and it is easily extinguished. It's better to have a proper lantern. They cost 10 gold though. They illuminate up to 10-meter radius. They too burn up to a shift of time, and then you need more lamp oil. But roll a d8 after each stretch of time. On a 1, the lantern goes out and must be refilled and relit. So lantern is much brighter, and there's also no chance of it going out when you attack someone or are attacked someone. Much more reliable. Let's go to the GM section, starting with the bestiary. We've got a classic selection of monsters, nothing too fancy here, and each of them present their own challenge. One, they have a lot of hit points, but they also have this stat here, ferocity. This determines how many initiative cards they draw. So monsters with ferocity of more than 1 act several times each round. And when they act, they do their special monster attacks. You roll on this table or pick one, and these hit automatically and have to be defended against. They give each monster a unique fighting style. An encounter with a monster will always be a hard and memorable fight. The GM section ends with the rules for overland journeys. Notice here that when making camp, everyone must make a bushcraft roll unless you have a tent. If you've got a tent, only the one erecting the tent must make a roll. So once again, it's a good idea to have a donkey to carry all of your stuff, including a tent, around. Some very short and condensed rules for hunting, fishing and foraging, rules for non-player characters, and some pages to create adventures with some random tables. It's nice that this is included, and the tables are not bad, but they are very limited. This alone is not enough, in my opinion, to teach anyone how to write an adventure. But it doesn't have to be, because included is the adventure book, and this includes 11 adventure sites strewn throughout the Misty Vale, including a free-form campaign that will take you throughout this Misty Vale and eventually has you confront and hopefully overcome an ancient evil that is threatening this place. All of these adventures give you a unique adventure site that you can freely explore, ranging from short dungeons with less than 10 rooms up to medium big dungeons with up to 20 rooms. We've got a good selection of example adventures here and different types of example dungeons. The old temples, caves, castles, mines, tombs, all presenting a different type of adventure, a different mood, and a different challenge to the group. These adventures are solid, nothing too crazy or too special, but they serve as a good introduction to the world of Dragonbane and to game mastering. And after playing through that campaign, you then have seen enough examples to make use of these tables and create more adventures on your own. Overall, Dragonbane is a heroic, classic medieval fantasy adventure role-playing game with a medium amount of complexity, similar in crunch to D&D 5th edition. It has a relatively flat power curve. The characters start as competent adventurers and they become heroes, but they never become invulnerable superheroes. There's no hit point bloat or anything like that. I think the game is a good fit for players who enjoy 5th edition or Pathfinder, but only ever play up to 10th level because characters become too powerful after that. Furthermore, and most importantly I think, this is the best RPG product, this box set, for new players that is out right now. The rules are not super simple, they have a bit of crunch, but they're easy enough to learn and are explained well. And the box gives you everything you need to start, including dice, including a battle map, including paper miniatures, including a campaign map with 11 adventure sites to explore and to go through. This is really the complete package. As to what other role-playing books you could use this with, this is not compatible with many of the books that I've lying around. Where you can always take inspiration, we'll have to adjust or come up with stats and numbers for monsters and NPCs yourself. From the general tone, this would work great with adventures and the adventure creating tools in the Forbidden Lands role-playing game. And the monsters in the Forbidden Lands rules and the Forbidden Lands bestiary also have a table of 6 attacks they can perform, but the stats are just not compatible at all. Rules-wise, this is most compatible with other derivatives of the basic role-playing system, so something like RuneQuest, or maybe most interestingly, Call of Cthulhu. A percentile die system and a d20 roll-under system are basically the same. You just have to multiply the d20 by 5 and you get a d%. And hit point wise, armor wise, damage wise, Dragonbane and Call of Cthulhu are pretty close. So if you want to include some really weird and out there monsters into your fantasy game, a Call of Cthulhu monster book might be a good choice. One final observation. The Dragonbane rules are surprisingly close to the first role-playing game that I have ever played. Germany's oldest role-playing game, The Dark Eye, das schwarze Auge, which also had an active parry system, and you had to roll on your skills to advance them. Only The Dark Eye 3rd edition was way more complicated than this, and the 4th and current 5th edition of The Dark Eye just stupendously complex and complicated. I think the Dark Eye players were tired of the complexity and slowness of the original rules, would quite enjoy using the Dragonbane rules instead. And these should easily adapt to the gaming world Aventuria of the Dark Eye. Anyway, I will try to get my gaming group together with my old The Dark Eye players, and I think they will quite enjoy this game. So yeah, Dragonbane. This will probably become a mainstay on my role-playing table and on this channel. Thank you for watching this video. I wish thee safe travels, dreamers, until we shall meet again.